Okay, what are we going to talk about?
I'm nervous. What are we gonna do?
So this is where I get really confused because you guys always say like we're live, but then like
when Mike says we're actually live,
I know, but do we still do the thing where we wait like 4 minutes?
No. He rolled the intro already. That means that we're live.
Right. Okay.
So when he says you're live, he used to do, which I liked. He used to do the 3, 2, and then nothing afterwards.
Fair enough. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are very, very excited today for this is like our 4th or 5th interview, second of the week. This one is going to be a little bit different than, the sports that we've usually gone down the road. And I'm really excited to have this conversation to gain some perspective on something that I really don't know much about. So please welcome our guest. I'm going to let you pronounce your name because I get nervous pronouncing anyone's name, even if it's like a normal name, because I get nervous I'm going to say it wrong and offend somebody. So I'm going to let you go.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Magid, and I'm the founder and CEO of Stronger Than Stigma.
Awesome. Very cool. So Stronger Than Stigma, check out their website. Really cool. There's a really cool blog. She's got a TED Talk out there. Where she goes on an awesome rant about millennials. That was very, very funny and very cool. So before we get started, we do a segment on this called Explain Your Architecture. And I see you have some really beautiful columns behind you. I don't know if you could maybe go a little bit more in depth on what we're looking at.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so.
That is an unbelievable
live set. Now?
Oh, yeah, we're live.
Oh, so people are watching this. Okay, cool. So this is like the entryway to my grandma's condo. And I actually moved in with her about 2 years ago. And that's what kind of gave me the push to leave my day job and start really focusing on Stronger Than Stigma full time. And then she passed away about a year ago. So I'm here by myself, but she has amazing taste.
Yeah, seriously. That is awesome.
Architecture is a lot of columns and cool art.
Yeah, it looks like you live like next to like Zeus and Cupid and all that. It's awesome.
They're my neighbors.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So I'd love to hear your story. And just so you're familiar with what we're about, we do baseball training and, sports training in general. But the one thing that we really like to talk about when we meet new people on this is we love to talk about like the purpose and the why of why people do what they do, and how that, for successful people kind of dictates every decision they make. Is that like they have that purpose, that like what they're trying to accomplish, and how that kind of takes them down their path. And, it may take them places they're not really expecting to go, but it's a really cool way to look at it. Like, I'm going to do everything because of my why. So I'd love to hear your backstory and kind of how you got involved, if you could share with everybody.
Sure. So just like you were saying about how sometimes you don't expect to go down the path that you end up, but it happens that way. That I would definitely say was me. I actually got sick when I was 17 in high school. And I struggled with anxiety and depression. Which was a huge wake-up call for me. I didn't know like what was a symptom. I didn't know. I was always kind of anxious and always had like test anxiety, and there was always just something that deep down under my skin was I don't know, making me nervous. And so finally when I was 17, I kind of like had that breaking point moment of just like, oh my gosh, something's wrong. I thought I was dying actually, because the anxiety started first, I guess, with like the panic attacks and the heart palpitations and the sweating and everything like that. And it was really unpleasant. So that started like a 6-month journey to recovery. And I think it's complicated because it's one of those things where it sucks while you're going through it. And then at the same time, I feel like you learn so much about yourself and about the world and like the way society works and why things are the way they are and how that's just dead wrong. I come from like a really loving household, and I don't want to ever like make it sound that I didn't grow up with a great childhood and whatnot. But I think that somewhere along the line, we all get conditioned to believe that we can't talk about our feelings, and heaven forbid we cry in public, and like all of these things about like showing weakness is just like wrong. And then as a result, we end up bottling things up, and then we don't address them until you reach that breaking point. So and especially I would say in men, because I think that y'all have like extra pressure to keep everything together, and not let anybody ever see you sweat. So that was the start down my path, was kind of just like recognizing like, oh man, I have this problem, like let me get past it. And I always said, if I live through this, then I want to make sure that nobody else feels as alone as I did. I got all the help that I needed, but my family was like, we were shaken by it, and we didn't know, like what was going on. So we're like, all right, this stays between our four walls. And I'm an only child, so I'm really only talking to adults about these things. So I went to the University of Florida, go Gators. And there, that was the first time that I kind of like owned my story, and I would meet people that really became lifelong friends, because we're still friends today. And I would share. And that was the first time that I ever felt comfortable kind of letting people in on what I had been through. And, it's not something that you necessarily get over. I think you learn how to manage, and then it becomes less part of your day-to-day life. And so, yeah, college was where I met people. They understood. A lot of times they were like, oh my God, I went through the same thing. Like, I get it completely. And I guess it was 3 of my friends and I got together, and I had this idea, like, why don't we fix what's wrong? We had great resources available for free on our campus, but they were so out of the way, and you wouldn't know where to go to reach out for help. Because I think the thought was, oh, we want to give people their privacy. So they, built this beautiful building, and then you needed like a bus to get to it on campus. So that wasn't helping anybody. And it definitely wasn't cool to reach out for help. And I think that everybody considers high school to be that time where like everybody, just needs to fit in and go along with the way things are. But I feel like college is like that too, especially with Greek life. And so everybody's busy trying to fit in and feel like they have friends, and especially on a big university where you could feel lost. And so there was this weird campus culture that really lent itself to people not talking about what they were struggling with. And yet, if you had a one-on-one conversation with someone, chances are, it would launch into something more serious, and you'd be like, man, have you reached out for help? And there was a suicide actually my freshman year. And I didn't know the student, but my friend and I don't know why, my friend had parked her car like way out past the stadium. And so we were walking by the stadium that night, and he had actually jumped. And we were there for like the aftermath. So there were a bunch of blinking lights and like ambulances and police cars and everything. And I remember stopping and asking the police officer, like, are we safe? Like, can we keep going? And he was like, yeah, I can't tell you what happened. You'll read about it on the front page of the paper tomorrow. But you're fine, keep going. And I had one of those moments where I just knew what had happened, and I got so angry. I was so upset that the student had fallen through the cracks, because I really felt like it was the university that had failed him, and us around him. Like, who knew that this person existed? I was mad that he wasn't like involved in the anxiety and depression support groups that I had found, and like why hadn't we crossed paths, and why didn't he know that like his life mattered, and all this stuff. And so that's kind of what really lit the fire under me to like grab my friends and be like, all right, we got to change this campus culture. And that's when Stronger Than Stigma was born. And at the same time, you know, we pitched it to the dean to say, like, you know, we really just want a campus-wide campaign to tell people where to go for help and to make it cool. And he was like, that's great, but join something pre-existing and make change from the inside. And I'm like, dude. So that made me mad again. And then all of a sudden, here we are, and we have a 501c3 nonprofit. We incorporated. We were 20 years old. Yeah. So kind of like Bill Gates in a garage somewhere, right?
So the one thing that I thought was interesting, like you had said, like you came from a loving family, and you know, it sounds like you had a pretty normal childhood in terms of what everyone is the normal. When in your experience, or when you talk to other individuals that have gone down this path, is it something that, like, is there like one episode or one event that changes the way that you start viewing things or thinking about things? Or is it just like out of nowhere, you wake up and you're like, this is overwhelming? Or
oh, in terms of like
starting to feel like having negative thoughts and stuff like that.
Oh, gotcha. I think for me, it kind of was like the tidal wave. Because I think that's what set me on the discovery path of like, oh my goodness, this has been part of my life. And like the little voice in my head has been mean for so long, you know, and then it just like bubbled over. So I feel like something, at least in my experience, something big had to happen before I recognized that I could have connected the dots. You know, like if you ever really want to make my mom upset, you just talk to her about like, well, you know, you didn't recognize that your kid was really anxious growing up, and like, why in fourth grade did she always have stomach aches around like math or whatever, you know? So I think that things just start to add up as you have that experience, and then you recognize like, oh, that's not necessarily, you know, a quirk or something about who I am as a person. That's like a symptom of an illness, and I can get better and I can learn how to manage it.
Yeah, what's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, no, what's interesting is that you mentioned there's sort of a stigma behind the mental health, especially in athletes, right? So, and male athletes is something that the three of you are talking to, you know something about. And there's sort of a stigma about, you know, being weak if you have a mental, if your anxiety, you have mental health issues. So it's not as like when you break your ankle, it's like, oh, I broke my ankle and everyone's fine. And you go to the doctor because you have a broken ankle and there's nothing wrong. Like that's completely normal in our society. But growing up, it seems like, oh, if you have a mental health thing, then you want to go on the bus off campus because you don't want to be seen because you're kind of, you know, you're nervous about it. And there's this stigma about it, which is interesting. They Stronger Than Stigma. And it seems like as a teacher now, it seems like, for as much as we've learned and as I guess our society has grown, it almost seems in teenagers and the kids that we work with, it's like worse now, you know, and maybe it's technology, maybe it's social media. I read a study a week ago that's saying, you know, girls that are 13 to 17 have proven to be more depressed than they've ever been in their lives. Is that something that you're seeing? And if so, why is it so prevalent in our system now?
Sure. So I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a researcher. So I'm reading the same things that you are and digesting it for myself as well. What I see is actually really positive, because to me, the fact that these numbers are trending upwards means that people are talking about the fact that they're not feeling well and they're reaching out for help. So I really don't think that, you know, oh, in the year 2020, everybody is a mess. And like, you know, I really don't want to blame a millennial, anybody in Gen Z. It's not our fault. We're not weaker as a generation. And people always want to place that like generational warfare of like, oh yeah, our grandparents were tough, man. And like y'all are sissies and you can't handle anything. And it's like, no, you know, y'all buried lots and lots of trauma and you know, feelings, and anything that wasn't right, you just swallowed it. And now here we are, empowered and talking about the fact that we're not feeling as well as we possibly could, and things don't feel right, and we're confused, and we're reaching out for help. And to me, that's awesome. I want to hear those things. So yes, the numbers are scary, and it looks like we're trending upwards, and what is it in the water that we're all drinking? Because we're crumbling as a society. But on the other hand, I'm like, no, this is great, because this means that people are really coming forward and talking about what's bothering them. So I like that we have access to those numbers now, and that they're growing, because to me, it's hopeful.
Yeah, it's a fantastic.
The one thing I don't understand about the numbers. So I think your website said like 1 out of 4 adults.
Yeah.
Right. So, or 1 out of 4 human beings. The one thing that I always think about is like, there can be one person. Well, there's probably many people that think I'm an asshole, right? That like, they're like, oh, that guy sucks.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No way.
Yeah, there's definitely. Yeah.
We'll say 98%, but then there's another 2% that haven't found out the truth yet. No, but in all seriousness, like there's probably plenty of people out there that, they look at me and they're like, that guy is either annoying, or that guy is funny, or that guy's quiet. Like, obviously, like who I am as a human being is going to depend on that emotions, right? So like, I'll use it. I mean, last week I'm a stay-at-home dad with this whole pandemic thing, and it is a lot sometimes. And I had like a full-on breakdown. But like, I wouldn't necessarily categorize myself, not for any other reason, but like as someone that deals with depression. But so like, how does that play into the statistics? Because like, I had a full-on breakdown that night, and like I like sat down with my wife, and I was like, I need you to help me out right now, because I am struggling. And it was so helpful to talk about. I don't ever shut up, so it's easy for me to talk about that. But I guess what I'm saying is like, how does that play into the statistics? And like, and like if someone comes forward and says that, like, are they labeled as dealing with depression, or is like, I just had an episode where I was kind of down on myself? Like, do you understand the question I'm asking? Okay.
So I would say that it's considered an issue if it interferes with your day-to-day life, like that it's really impacting you from functioning like a quote unquote normal, which there's no such thing. So that's why I'm going like this, normal human being. So I wouldn't say, one breakdown and like, oh my God, call the labeling police. Here's your label. I think that the statistics in and of themselves are faulty, because you only can record somebody who's come forward and sought treatment. So because of the stigma, a lot of people really aren't talking about it still. So that number is 1 in 4, 1 in 4 people at some point in their lifetime will struggle with a mental health issue. In reality, I really think it's 4 out of 4. I really think at some point something hits you, and, whether it's situational and you're grieving, the loss of a relationship, the loss of, a preconceived notion of what life is supposed to be, the loss of a job, whatever. Like those moments where things just crush you, whether it's, you get through that and then it's gone and it never happens again, or it's a chemical imbalance and it's really just part of, it's not your fault, but it's part of your genetics and based on your environmental surroundings, what's stressing you, what comes out of that, genome or whatnot. And so that 1 in 4 is based on who reaches out for help, so that you can, be counted in that way and recorded. And I do think it's a lot higher than that. But even so, that 1 out of 4, the average like American family, I would say, is 4 people. And so you can see how everybody knows somebody, even if you're not directly affected by it, then somebody you love or in your close circle struggles, and they might not be telling you about it, but it's just facts.
Yeah, I think I was definitely one of the people in my family who was supposed to be like strong and, like never have to talk about my feelings. And I think it hit me at a point in my life where I struggled at a point because I was supposed to be strong, but then I kind of broke and didn't know how to react to it. I think you see a lot of that with kids when it comes to picking colleges and, and trying to, impress their parents and doing things for other people, especially with sports. They continue playing the sport because they're trying to impress their family, the girl, whatever they're trying to do. Can you talk a little bit about like how to not let that get to you? You know, how you shouldn't really worry about letting other people down.
Totally. So I 100% agree with you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, mini story.
Your mini story. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So that's something I wish somebody had told me back in the day. Like I wish there was some sort of like life skills class where somebody like teaches you like, hey, just because somebody's older and, you know, has been around the block more, or they're considered an adult, doesn't mean they have everything figured out. And therefore it doesn't mean that you suddenly overnight become an adult and know everything. Like it just doesn't work that way. And I feel like there's all this pressure on us, especially growing up, going to school and, you know, trying to be an athlete or trying to get a scholarship for whatever reason to a college. Everything, we're on this like fast track of like, you know, okay, first I graduate high school and I have to like place in the top 10% of my class and I have to have the best stats ever. And then these scouts are going to come find me and life is going to align. And then you're like, you know, in the chute to the school. And then you get to the school and it's this moment of like, oh my God, I did the thing. I did everything that I was ever asked to do. I aced my SATs. Like, I'm here, now what? And it's like this other moment of like, it's a brief release, I would say, of like, oh man, I did it. But then there's like so many other things that get, you know, like dumped in your lap, and nobody teaches you how to handle things or prioritize. Or like for me, you know, that was college was the first time I'm like doing laundry and like going grocery shopping and like learning how to take care of myself. And nobody considers those things to be big wins. But I think that like those things need to be celebrated, so then you can have some perspective too on like, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Like if you need some time to figure out if, you know, the sport you were playing back in the day still makes sense for you now, or if, you know, you really like something else, but it's holding you back from exploring whatever that new passion is. It's just, I wish I could take away that pressure. And I, you know, if anybody out there tonight is listening and feels overwhelmed just by everything they feel the weight of the world on their shoulders, I hope that my words are calming, at least to be like, you know, it's all part of the journey. Like even if you mess up, this is the thing. Okay. So even if you fail, and fail is a weird word, but like, even if you like decide this isn't your thing, I'm not going to play the sport, I don't like the school, I need some time off, it's okay. Like you can stop out of whatever it is, regroup, get back to what you want. Like life doesn't stop at 20, 18, 22, whatever age, you know, life doesn't stop. You learn something, it's part of your journey, and there's no such thing as like a set path.
But that's kind of what we're selling to young people, right? Is like, it's packaged up for them, like go to school, get good grades, do this, like, and not only that, it's like, it's so like, it's so locked in and concrete. Like you said, the word fail, like the word fail is like a bad word, which is insane to me, because I don't know one person that's not even successful, that's an adult, that's been like, yeah, everything's gone pretty according to plan. Like, it's just not the case. So, you know, and I think until we start embracing that idea that like failure is a great part of what, like you said, I love the way you said that journey, right? Like I think there's so many kids that are like, I got to college, now what? Like I did what I was supposed to do. Like, wait, I'm like, I like still have to live. Like I still gotta like do stuff every day. Like it should be, like you said, almost like it's just an endless journey of us learning and adapting and adjusting and just trying to figure out what we want to do as human beings. But it's turned into this whole like, this is what you do, then you do this next, do this next, do this next. And it's, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, thankfully I had parents that weren't bought into that, I guess, that were just like, dude, do whatever makes you happy and we'll high five you along the way. I just couldn't imagine having that compartmentalized piece like thrown at me over and over. I feel like I would absolutely be crumbling under it.
And it's funny too, because when you get to college, I feel like the big pressure cooker is, what's your major? And that question will send shivers down my spine probably till the day I die. Because I just remember, it's like people, especially older adults, forget how to socialize with people in their early 20s. And so they find out you're in college and the first question is, oh, what's your major? And it's like, no, please, not the M word. And I think the biggest secret is like your major does not matter. Like pick something that makes you excited to get up and go to class and where the professors are awesome and inspiring and learn something and challenge yourself. But then like any other job besides like being a doctor or a lawyer, there's no like set, you have to graduate and then go to this program and do XYZ. Anything else, you can major in obscure literature of like some island that doesn't even exist anymore, and then still learn how to work an Excel spreadsheet and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, this is
anything.
Yeah, I mean, I had a question about failure, and I want to keep that here. But since you just said that, you mentioned earlier, and we didn't do a very good job of talking about your business and everything that you guys do. You mentioned earlier that you went to Florida, University of Florida, and you said something, and maybe I'm misremembering, but it seemed like you've changed paths from what you did when you graduated college till now. Is that true? Like, did you major in something else and then kind of find your way and find your purpose?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm a poster child for being a mess in terms of like taking forever to choose a major. I think I started as a business major because I was like, oh, if I have a business major, then I won't have to go back to school. And then that'll be great because the torture will be over. But business was like, I got it. I liked it, but it was boring. And I always wanted to be an actress. Like theater was just my thing growing up. But I needed to like major in something practical. And so I had this like internal struggle for a really long time. And then finally, I think I had to take like a sociology of gender course for a diversity credit. And I fell in love with the material, and the professor was so cool. And we were just talking about how like, boys, when they're born, they put them in blue and girls are put in pink. And then like, that's the way it is. And all of these random things where it's like, wait, we can talk about why that's wrong, or like how girls can wear blue and boys can wear pink and still survive. Wow. So I actually became a women's studies major. And life still continues. So I know there's a bunch of like jokes about that, but I'm fine. And my friends and I started the nonprofit as juniors, and my dream was always to like see it through as the nonprofit that it could be in the business, and really run it. And my friends were awesome and dedicated, but they had plans for afterwards. One of my friends joined the Navy, one of them went to occupational therapy school, and one went to become a mental health counselor. So all like awesome people contributing to society, but like this was my baby, and if I didn't graduate and like continue to nurture it, then it just would die. And I didn't want that to happen. But at the same time, I knew that I needed to like eat and live. And so I moved back home to Jacksonville, and I moved back in with my parents, saved up enough money to then move out. That was a big deal. And then, I think my first job out of school, I was actually like, I joke that I was a carpool mom for a family whose daughter went to this really cool school that was way the hell out from where they lived. So they needed somebody to pick up their daughter and drop her off. So I was a carpool mom for a while. And then I was a youth director at my synagogue and just ran the whole youth department. So I have a soft spot for high schoolers. I actually work with 4th through 12th grade. So I love my kids and I miss them. I know the hardest part is the parents, right? I don't know if you guys have that experience. But the kids are great. And so I was there for 2 years, and then it was finally like that, now or never moment. I had the opportunity to give the TED Talk. I was really hoping that it would go viral. Still waiting on that moment. But it just, the momentum was there, and I didn't want to get old and wonder what if.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the phase that I'm in now.
So you guys are, looking at your website, you guys do a lot of empowerment and education. Can you just talk a little bit about like what specifically Stronger Than Stigma does, and kind of, for any kids out there that are listening, kind of how they can get involved?
Yeah, totally. The first thing I would say, if you want to get involved and really do me a solid, is if you follow.
Watch the TED Talk.
Yeah, watch my TED Talk.
You gotta watch the TED Talk and share it with everybody.
No, Mike, can you put the link in the comments?
Me?
No, Mike. He decided the one with the
I can't do that and talk at the same time.
Can you reenact your TED Talk right now?
Gotta get to the mic.
Yeah, no. So if you could follow us on social media, Instagram @Stronger Than Stigma, Facebook @Stronger Than Stigma, and then Twitter. One of these days I'll be better at tweeting, but it's like @STS_together. That would be a huge help. But then we're designed as a for us, by us social movement, meaning that we really want people to understand that it's a millennial staff that's working on this, a millennial board. We're speaking to our generation, and if we attract people older than us, great, they get it, and we want them on our team. And hopefully we attract people younger than us too. But my dream is that Gen Z and younger grow up in this world where they're like, what stigma? Like, why would I not tell you I went to therapy last week? And that's like our vision. Our vision for the world is, it's not a weakness to reach out for help. It's a strength. Do it. And so that message of you're not alone is in everything that we do. And it's all about giving people that experience. So I always say we're a social support network. We want to be that community that you can belong to, where you understand you're not alone, and there are people out there that you can connect with either online or in person. So we really specialize in in-person events. We actually put together, I'm wearing the shirt now, it's from our comedy tour, so it's called Nobody's Happy. And we did the Nobody's Happy comedy tour, and we traveled the East Coast back in October 2018. And the idea was like, okay, comedy is really what connects us. It breaks down barriers. It's cathartic for comedians who oftentimes are troubled souls. And, and in the audience, it's the things they talk about are relevant and relatable, and you want to laugh, and it's cathartic for you too. So it's a really good bridge. So we do as much as we can with that tone. We really want people to be like, oh, that's relatable content. So we did this comedy tour. We teach a workshop called How to Be a Feelings Ninja, where we go into schools or businesses and we use improv comedy skills to translate into coping skills. So then you're like, oh, okay, next time I get overwhelmed, maybe in the game we're throwing like red balls at you and like, a shopping cart or whatever. That's one of the games. But in real life, it would be like, my college major, my job, what am I going to do? Like next time I'm overwhelmed, then I'll know how to handle it. So we do that. And then I'm really excited about our latest project. We created the first ever pop-up shop for mental health. So it's called The Living Room, and it's, we call it an installation for conversation. So it's part interactive art installation and Instagram opportunities, and part venue space where we hosted our comedy shows and concerts and things like that to bring people together. And then part literal living room. So it was set up with couches, and it was all about getting people into this cool, beautiful space designed, to make them feel at home, where they could have real talk with strangers about anything and nothing, including their mental health. So now, the goal is to try and take that on the road to as many places as we can. We did it for the first time in Jacksonville last May, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we were set to do it again this year, but we're in quarantine and don't want to get anybody sick. So hopefully sometime soon that'll be happening, and hopefully we'll be traveling with it too. But those are our projects right now, except I will say during quarantine, everything we're doing is virtual, so anybody can join. We do something called the lunch bunch on Fridays from 12 to 1. People can join our Zoom room, and the whole concept is like, you don't have to eat alone. Like, this is lonely, but at least once a week, come sit with your lunch, talk to other people, meet and connect, and the conversation flows between like things that we're terrified of and struggling with to like, hey, what's in that bowl that you're eating over there? So it's good.
That's an interesting one, because I know in high school, I believe a kid started it. I'm not sure, but there's like a national what?
Sit with me.
Yeah, sit with me. Like an app and stuff where you can then just go and you sit with, so you find someone to sit with at lunch, because I mean, it sounds, when I first started teaching, it sounded weird, but now that when you're doing CAF duty and you see the function of kids, and, you see certain kids that you can tell are just so anxious sitting there and they don't know what to do and they're sitting alone. And, that program is such a unique and interesting program. I think it helps a lot of kids for sure.
Awesome. I still have nightmares about the high school cafeteria. So oh my goodness. I always was like, oh yeah, I'm like a floater. So I never had like a set lunch table or crew. I kind of just like was sort of kind of friends with everybody. So they would like tolerate an extra person at their table, but it was, God.
I have nightmares about
back there.
I have nightmares about the cafeteria now as a teacher, but for much different reasons. Just with kids throwing ham sandwiches at me and stuff. It's not good. You mentioned something before, and I think it's so important in terms of the athletes that we coach. And baseball, especially, is this game of failure, and you're going to fail a whole bunch. And in school, growing up, we've been conditioned that the number of rights is always important. So on a test, you want to get 9 out of 10, right? Like the number that you get is so important, and the magnitude isn't that important because they're all kind of the same. And Rob actually had a great analogy. I don't know when, Robbie, you said it a couple of weeks ago about, when we think of failure, everyone immediately thinks it's a negative thing. But when you first start learning how to play a guitar, you don't like play the first chord and then you get it wrong. You're like, well, I'm done. I stink. I failed. Like that's kind of the fun part about playing the guitar, is that like learning process. Like, oh, I hit the wrong chord. Oh, let me do it again. So it's weird to me that it makes so much sense. Like failure makes so much sense in a lot of areas of our lives. And then it's just absolutely the worst thing you could possibly do in other areas of our lives. Do you see that with a lot of people coming to you that, fear of failure, fear of, putting themselves out there serves as like this significant handcuff to a lot of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think as humans, we're hardwired not to fail. Like we don't want to bring shame on ourselves or our families, and we're so concerned about what other people think. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I personally have struggled with. I think all of my friends have confessed that at some point in time, like it's very common. And I think that the stakes are double high if you know that you're struggling with something, and then it's like you feel it's this added weight that you carry around. So it's like, oh man, if I fail now, it's 10 times worse, because then it's like, not only did I fail at the thing, I failed at life because I can't handle what I've been given. And it's like, no, that's not true. If anything, I think the best example is, how you always get, told that you need to have an internship in college, and like, oh, you got an intern, it's got to be really impressive, la, la, la. And it's basically, you're working for free. And I think the best internships that my friends and I ever had were the ones where we walked away saying, holy cow, no, never, don't want to do that. Because it gave us the opportunity to fail. We weren't making money. That wasn't our title, like we had nothing writing on it besides the commitment of we would show up. And in so doing, we learned like, oh no, that is not the career for me. Because if I had to wake up and do that 9 to 5 every day, like couldn't.
Yeah, we actually interviewed Mark Randolph, founder of Netflix, and he's a big proponent on immersing yourself in what you think you want to do, and oftentimes you're going to find out, well, I really hate this, and this isn't what I want to do. So I think that's a great point. When you see people that kind of have that that thought process about failure, and they have so much anxiety, what are, I know you said you're not a doctor and you're not offering life advice here, but what are some of the things that maybe that you've seen them kind of do to cope with and overcome some of their struggles with that?
Sure. I mean, so if I'm channeling my youth director days, I used to find it fascinating when I had a student come to me really stressed or anxious about whatever it was that was going on, whether it was in youth group or at school, and it was like bleeding over. And I would ask them, like, hey, what's making you so anxious? And, they would tell me, like, oh man, if I don't pass these SATs or this test and get into the next level or whatever, like everything they had everything hinged on this one outcome of this one small baby step that they thought the whole future was riding on. And if I could just get them to see how the outcome of whatever it was that they were worried about really won't matter in, even the day after they take it, like it really, the slate starts again. Like you always have an opportunity to, do better or to learn or to figure something out based on an experience. Like I don't think there's any downside to like walking out of a fight or whatever of like the struggle between what's important and what isn't important, or what's, going to make a difference and what matters to you now. I think I'm rambling a little bit, but the point is like it doesn't matter long term. And if I could get a student to recognize, or even to go through with me, like, okay, what if you failed this one thing? Plot out, if you've told me now, like, where this could take you, and it's supposed to go on and on and on to the next positive thing, take me down the failure rabbit hole. Tell me what would happen to you, and like, do it, like, tell me, like, okay, if I fail this test, then I won't get into college, and then I won't have a job, and I'm going to live in a cardboard box. And it's like, all right, let's like debunk each of these myths and prove to you that like you're not going to end up in a cardboard box. Like, you go home to your parents and they help pick you up again. And like, if your parents say no, then I'm sure you have a neighbor. Like, I'm sure there's a roof somewhere we can find you. And like, it got to be funny, but at the same time, it's like, we have to relieve that stress and get people to not think, tunnel vision towards an end goal, and recognize that like there's wiggle room. There's wiggle room in everything. And we cut every other human so much more slack than we cut ourselves. And that's a lesson I'm still learning. I'm very forgiving when it comes to, other people missing a meeting or whatever. And it's like, if I do that, if I miscalendar something, like, oh, it's a bad day for me. Like, I'm like,
I think the biggest thing right now, I think with a lot of kids, especially, I think your story's so relevant for our audience because, most of them are like 15, 16, 17 years old, is that they're not in it alone. I think that's the biggest message I'm receiving right now, is that everyone's literally in the same boat. And I think that's part of the reasons why everyone's okay with kind of the pandemic going on right now, is that because everyone's in the same boat and everyone's kind of just like living life and everyone's at peace. Because I know that everyone's in the same boat and everyone knows, everyone else is, struggling or just staying at home, whatever it is. And I kind of wish everyone had the same mindset during their everyday life. But I think it's really important for these young kids to understand that, if they're failing a test or if they're not getting into a certain school, that they're part of the 99% who are also in the same boat as them. And I think that's like such a great message that you're putting out there especially for our audience.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like, we're in this really weird moment where finally everybody's having a shared experience of struggle, you know? So we all have this, we can all relate to the fact that we're going stir crazy. Like we can't go outside without, you know, having to weigh, you know, do I need to bring a mask? Do I need to wear gloves? Like, can I just go on my balcony, please? You know? And thinking through those things and fearing, you know, what's next and not having answers. And it's so relatable to just the day in, day out struggle of somebody that, say, struggles with anxiety. You know, like this is the first time where they'll be able to, you know, in the years to come, point back to this experience and say, well, remember how you felt when you were in quarantine? Like, that's how I feel. That's like, and that's exhibit A, you know, like, so that's something that makes sense rather than just like a list of symptoms or whatever it is. Like, it's relatable to say, remember how we felt when, you know, we didn't know what was going on. Like, humans don't handle uncertainty well. So we're all in one big pot of uncertainty.
One of the, I mean, I want to ask one question before I jump into this, because I feel like we can rant on what I was about to say I could talk about this for hours, but I'm not stating this as a fact because I don't know it as a fact. I just, I heard someone talking about it when they talked about drug addiction. They were saying that in a small percentage of people that are actually have some type of drug dependency, I think it was like 15% or something like that. This is what they were claiming. I don't know if it's true, but they were saying like 15% of those human beings that have that drug addiction, it's only 15% that is a chemical addiction to the drug. They said a lot of it was people, they didn't have anything else going on. Like they didn't have a purpose or like something to look forward to, or they didn't have a part of their life that they were really, really excited about. Do you find that with, you know, the human beings that come to you guys looking for help, that a lot of them, when they figure out what they actually really enjoy doing or they have a passion for, they get like a bigger purpose, that it kind of starts to help them?
I'm thrown off a little bit by the statistics of alcoholism because I'm not an alcoholism specialist.
I was using that as like it made me think about that. I'm not asking you for the percentages. I'm just saying that's what someone said. And it got me thinking, like, I wonder if it's the same for, you know, people that are struggling with mental health.
Yeah, no, I just like alcoholism is a disease, and a lot of times it is comorbid, meaning like it's not the alcoholism necessarily that brought them into the room. It's kind of like the depression causes them to need to rely on alcohol, and then it spirals and yada yada. So I can see where you would say like, oh, if you find a purpose and then you focus on and pull yourself, you know, out of it, maybe with treatment. I think that purpose is important no matter like who you are or what you're struggling with, because I think that all of us as humans, we get tired and we need a reason to get out of bed in the morning, and we need something that lights us up so that we continue to live another day. I think it's hard to say, because a lot of times I'm dealing with people who are either currently struggling or have struggled or love someone who's struggling, and at that point, I feel like life is what's difficult on a whole, rather than like, you know, this one part, like, oh, if I only had, you know, if I were only passionate about knitting a little bit more, like, then I would be okay. You know, like, I don't think anybody's at that spot where it's that easy. And I think that purpose helps everyone, but I think that sometimes even purpose is such a big word and it represents so much. Like, even to me, that sounds like a lot of pressure to like find your purpose. And I feel like a lot of times it doesn't necessarily happen for you in high school or college or right after. Like, I think sometimes you have to like live and things have to happen to you, especially the things that don't go according to plan. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I was supposed to have this experience because now, like, look at me. And that's something that I'm like, you know, depression and anxiety suck. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to have to struggle with either of them or have to have, you know, been in my shoes. But now I'm like, man, I would have never been in this line of work. I would have never understood how awful these things are, or to want to help other people, or to be able to listen and just hear people out and understand that like life is rough, you know, and just to have a greater understanding, I think, of the human experience, that it's not supposed to necessarily be rainbows and butterflies all the time. And that's not like, I don't think any of us are really striving for that. I think being content and like satisfied and comfortable, like that's what we're seeking. So I don't know if that answers.
No, I think that was great, because I never actually, when I was talking about like the purpose of the why, I didn't mean like this, like I need to be an accountant. I meant it like when we talk about the why behind doing things and the purpose, and we always say that it's like a constantly changing and adjusting thing. Like whatever you love to do, like do that with all the vigor you have, and like be really passionate about it. And then maybe you'll find out, oh, I don't like doing that, I'm gonna try something else. Or like, like that I meant as a purpose, as like something that excites you, I guess. But I never thought of it the way you said it. That was really interesting. I never thought that like the purpose, it like can be overwhelming, where it's like, oh, I have to have a purpose. I have to have a purpose. Like that's a really interesting thought. I never like realized that we could be overwhelming, especially young people, like, you know, with that idea.
For
like,
sure.
If
you need help figuring out what to be nervous about at any point in time, you can call me and just be, hey, what's going on? And I'll, you know, I'm not Chicken Little, but I also will definitely tell you something.
But I think that is such a huge point, Rob, and we got that a lot in our Slack conversations, and you know, I get that a lot in my hitting groups. Is, you know, everyone talks about purpose, and I am like, you know, that guy sounding that horn. You know, I'm the Pied Piper when it comes to purpose. Like I think it's so huge in our lives, and it's anecdotal, I know, but I just think purpose and process it just helps human beings. But to that point, I can see how that would be, because it is so monumental. It could be so, you know, anxiety, you know, fill your soul with anxiety. And that we hear that all the time from kids saying, well, like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And you're like, does anyone know what they want to do with their life? I mean, that's sort of that path. Like life is the path, not the end. And to your point, I can now see how that can be sort of like a, you know, overwhelming for 18 to 22-year-old kids that don't know what the hell they want to do with their lives. And they've been told their entire lives, you better know what you want to do when you're 22.
That like
Steve, 18 to 25-year-old Steve.
18 to 30-year-old Hal.
That like purpose thing too, like you just said, Steve, like it's like, then it becomes like existential. Like that gets tied into like, well, why are we here on this planet? And then it's like,
yeah.
You know, and then you're like wondering what color mirrors are. And then it gets out of hand. The one thing that I felt like I really wanted to bring up, because it's something I am super, super passionate about. As I hate social media. I feel like you'd be a really good like, I feel like you must have a lot of conversations about this, or there's got to be so many people that come to, because I remember in high school, like I would look at other kids' social media and be like, why is everyone so much cooler than me? Like, why are they having more fun than me? And I was like, oh, I hate everyone. Those kids stink. And then I deleted it, and then I stopped looking at it, I felt better. But like, can you talk, like I'm going to say 99% of the people, other than my dad, that are listening to this are going to be 18, you know, between 14 and 22 years old. And social media is like, that's all that, it's just in their face all the time. And I'm assuming you talk to a lot of the kids about that. So I'd love to hear your take on all of it.
Okay, so I think it's really hard to paint anything as like completely good or completely bad. So I think social media kind of like sits in the in-between, like everything else. And I think it's fantastic in the way of like, oh my goodness, we're living in the future. We can stay connected to people we met when we were 2 years old, and, you know, maintain a bond, or like befriend somebody in Greece, and, you know, just mind the time zone. But other than that, like, I'm connected. So I think that, you know, technology and connectedness, magical stuff. At the same time, I think that social media is like one big comparison trap where it's like anything and everything happens online, and it happens from like you sitting on your couch scrolling. So no matter what you're looking at, if it's not a picture of somebody sitting on their couch scrolling, yeah, whatever that is looks a lot cooler than what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times you need that reality check of like, okay, let me process what I'm seeing. This person went to a wedding. So duh, they did their makeup and they put on a fancy dress. Like, duh, they should be wearing that. There was a dress code versus like, yeah, no, I'm not wearing any makeup. I'm wearing sweatpants. I'm in my house. Nobody has seen me for 25 days. You know, like, I don't care if I smell. You don't compare that with, you know, somebody once said, like, don't compare your red carpet with somebody else's behind the scenes. And it's so true. It's like, you have to remember perspective of like, you know, nobody has a good day all the time. They're only going to post the good days on social media. So yes, it's a highlight reel. Whenever you go on there, you know, you're only going to see person XYZ having fun, or them bragging about something, or them, you know, celebrating a win, because we don't talk about our losses. And I think that that's the real struggle of social media, is like, why doesn't it reflect reality? Why is it this augmented reality of perfection where, of course, nobody can live up to anything that they see online? And remember that, especially with pictures and like Instagram, everybody has those same apps. We all know that you can add 25 different filters and change the contrast and add more saturation and look like $1,000,000. That's awesome. And that's probably what Joe Schmo over there did, you know? But it's like, we forget that Joe Schmo also has access to those filters and is using them to their benefit. So like, yeah, you know, of course, nobody's going to post a picture where they like circle and enhance their pimples, you know? Like, we just don't do that. So I think that social media is a tool, yes, to keep us connected, but if we can remember to like take everything with a grain of salt of like, yeah, that person is putting their best foot forward, and remember that, you know, just because they're posting every day doesn't mean that that day is a great day, doesn't mean they're not covering it up, doesn't mean they're not using 25 filters. Like, there's so much that has to go into looking at it and being more healthy with consuming it. But the other thing I will say too is adults are addicted too. So when people like to, like, you know, say, oh, the kids these days like don't understand and social media will be our downfall, it's like, okay, mom, like, I see you on Facebook right now. Stop.
Well, they also would have been doing it if they had social media. They just didn't have it. They would. They all would have been doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a conversation that like I actually want to have tomorrow with you, Robbie and Howie, and we've been having a lot in our group chat today all day. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, you know, social media and all these things you just talked about. It's predicated on us being like externally dependent on someone else's opinions. So we become so like, we measure happiness based on what other people's expectations of us are and what we think that they think we should be and what we should do. And, you know, so in baseball, when I strike out, everyone's looking at me and they think I'm a failure. Like you said, everyone, you know, it's so ironic. Like when you have a pimple, you think you have 1,000 pimples when no one else knows you. No one even knows that you have a pimple. Like no one cares, you know, like it doesn't matter. I think it's funny when women wear earrings because I don't know one man on earth that's ever earrings. I don't know.
Never what with earrings?
I don't know one man on earth that's ever noticed a woman's earrings.
Unless they're giant boobs.
Or a woman's fingernails. Like no man on earth has ever been like, yo, those are really good fingernails. The reason that I think, and again, I'm just completely speculating here, and this is a conversation that we've been having today a little bit. The reason I think women do that or girls do that is for the other girls, right? They do their nails, they get their makeup on, they do all their stuff. for other women because they think that other women, that's like their expectation of other women. So anyway, I'm getting off on a rant, but we become so externally dependent on other people's thoughts that we constantly just chase, and we're chasing the expectations of other people, so we can actually never truly be happy, because the only way you can be happy is if it's internal. So you can only be happy with yourself, not other people's thoughts of you. And I think social media has really brought that out. And I think this quarantine has really brought that out. You know, like quarantine is everyone trying to do stuff for other people and make their lives seem even more important when everyone's in the damn house. Like no one's life is important right now. We're all just outside of, you know, the emergency responders. I mean, we're all just sitting here doing nothing. So we want to make it look like we're exciting and we're having a good time, or we're popular. And to me, it's just chasing your tail. And I think a lot of anxiety and problems come from that. And that's just, you know, my opinion. And that's what we were talking about all day today, which is really ironic. So.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to be said about how much weight expectations hold. I feel like expectations are the worst because I've never really seen anything pan out the way I expect it to. Either it's like a lot better or a lot worse. It's never like just what I expect. And I feel like, you know, we get that's part of like living in the future, like not living in the present, is being so concerned about like, oh, what is supposed to happen next? Or like, what should I feel like now? And it's like, chill out, like deep breath. What are you feeling now? Like, how are you doing? And that's fine. Like, you know, that's enough for that moment. I think that to talk about like makeup and nails real quick, I feel like there's all of this like pressure around perfection for both genders, but I think it's like defined differently. And I think that there are all these like rituals where each gender is supposed to go through to like be the best and, you know, be the most attractive and whatever. And so we forget like, okay, but that's not like how long eyelashes are. Like, like they just don't look like that when you wake up.
You gotta tell my wife that.
Like, you know, and so we're all trying to like enhance what we have. I think, yes, mostly to have the external validation from others, but also I feel like it's really sad that that's what our own standards of beauty and what's tolerated and what's perfect or whatever have been so skewed based on like what we see in magazines. And especially, I think perfume ads and cologne ads are probably the best like gender neutral thing to talk about, because you see men and women like just, you know, depicted and these like perfect and odd and nude ways. And it's just like, since when have you ever seen anybody like in that position or like wearing that or whatever? It's like, you know, no, it's not real life. It's not real life. So I don't know why. I hear
dude riding a jet ski, but he's like in like real deep thought.
He's like oiled up too.
So we unfortunately that's our hour. But that was all. Thank you so much. That was really cool. But before we wrap up and say our thank yous, all right. So let's say I am a teenager, I'm a young adult, whatever, and I want to get involved, or I want to reach out and see what you guys are all about. Like what's my first step? I just go to your website. Is there like a button to click to like talk to somebody? Like, how do I do that?
So I would recommend connecting with us on social media. We're millennials, so we will respond if you send us a message or, you know, on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. So I would love to be in contact with you if you're interested in mental health advocacy. If you have a story you want to share, you know, we have a blog that we like to feature people's personal stories on. We're always looking for new content, and especially, I love speaking to students because they keep me hip and relevant. You know, if they tell me like, this is how we talk about these things now, and this would be funny, or this is the kind of thing that I would relate to, then like, I want to hear it, you know? So don't be afraid to reach out. You know, the website has all of our contact information, even like a contact form that'll go to my email and I would email you back, or social media, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
Awesome
Oh,
hour.
thank you guys. This was fun. It flew by.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.